Palm Tree is hiring now for consulting roles across its U.S. offices. You can apply at palmtreellc.com or through the link in the show notes. But why should you care? Palm Tree is a premier M&A consulting and advisory firm that sits at the intersection of strategy, finance, and analytics. The firm looks like a traditional consulting firm from the outside, but it's much more than that, functioning as a one-stop shop to support private equity clients. Palm Tree focuses exclusively on mergers and acquisitions and the private equity investment lifecycle, transactions, transitions, and transformations of businesses. Sound exciting? To learn about open roles and to apply, click the link in the show notes or go to palmtreellc.com.
Consulting recruiting season is upon us, so I recently sat down with Keith Bevans, a Bain partner and the firm's head of global consultant recruiting. We talked about the changes afoot in the consulting industry and at Bain specifically, Bain's hiring targets and timelines for this year's recruiting season, how to stand out in the Bain process, interviews, and so much more. You're going to want to grab a pen and a notepad and listen intently as we talk all about how to navigate this year's intense and competitive consulting recruiting season. Let's dive right in.
So Keith, thanks so much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you back. I feel like I have to send you a certificate because you are the first repeat guest that we've had on a live call and that we've had on our Strategy Simplified podcast. So first of all, congratulations. Biggest honor of your career, I know. But for those of our community who may not be familiar with you, can you just share a little bit about who you are and why you're here today?
Sure. That's a very deep philosophical question on the back end, but maybe we'll keep it more practical. First of all, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where people are in the world. I see a lot of people online. My name is Keith Bevans. I'm a partner in Bain's Chicago office. And as Naaman said, I lead global consultant recruiting for Bain. Just background-wise, you can see a lot about my background, sort of frankly, on LinkedIn, but I have 2 engineering degrees from MIT in electrical engineering. Somewhere along the way, I decided that I'd be a better fit for running an engineering company than being an engineer. And so I was looking to go the business route and ended up joining Bain after my master's degree. I did 4 years at Bain and then went back to Harvard for my business degree and rejoined Bain in 2002. We just had our 20th reunion at HBS. In 2008, I was promoted to partner. And then in 2013, I left the partnership and left the client side of the business to head up global consultant recruiting for the firm. So everyone at the consultant level, which is the post-MBA level, but includes PhDs, it includes working professionals, and a lot of other parts of Bain's talent acquisition engine, I support through my servant leadership role at Bain. Outside of work, I like to say sort of beyond LinkedIn, I have 2 boys, both in college now. One is a rising senior, also an engineer like both of his parents, and the other one is probably going to major in economics as a rising sophomore. And my wife and I have been married for 24 years. I'm in Chicago for the last 26 years since I joined Bain, but born and raised in the Jersey Shore, which I didn't claim for a long time. I used to say in the middle by the water, but it's back and I'm going to claim it. And I'm from the Jersey Shore and I'm proud.
It's in vogue again.
Exactly.
I love it, Keith. So you've just done a few things throughout your career. That's it. So
I took one job and never left.
Yeah. So I'm going to make a statement here, Keith. It's going to be broad. We're going to take a 30,000 foot view of the industry in Bain first, and then we'll double click into a few things. I'm going to make a statement, just ask you to respond to it.
Okay, so, let's have it.
The state of the consulting industry, ? Go.
Very robust, very strong. We are very optimistic about the industry. I think, like a lot of things, technology, innovation, disruption, data availability, data analytic capability, and just information sharing, information overload has transformed the industry in a lot of ways. You know, even I think people tend to think about that over the last maybe 2 or 3 years. My gosh, you know, the pandemic and all this other stuff has changed things. But if I look over the longer arc of my career, back at the beginning, the challenge was finding the data. If you could find the data, you were the hero. You know, there was no Google when I started, right? And so in some ways, it was finding a needle in a haystack. And for the last decade or so, it's definitely been finding the right needle in a stack of needles. Because in under a second, Google will return 10,000 results for what I was looking for. I have to find out which one is right. And oftentimes there's conflicting data. And so the capability and the skills that are required to parse through all of that and be discerning with the data is what's really changed, what's really made consulting, I think, a lot more exciting, because it requires really deep expertise in analytics, in data science, in design. As an AC, when I was at Bain, and even when I was a consultant at Bain, we'd leave the clients behind with a well-formatted, oftentimes locked spreadsheet so they couldn't break the tool. Bain now leaves client teams behind with an app that integrates with their enterprise systems and that they can monitor their supply chain in real time from their phones 24/7 as an executive team. That means we need app developers. That means we need integration experts that can. So the state of the industry, I think, is actually quite exciting when you look at how technology is really shaping it. And in terms of the underlying business fundamentals itself, it's quite strong.
So if there's this diversity of talent and background that's now needed at Bain and consulting overall, I would take it to mean that you're looking for folks from more diverse backgrounds than just consulting is traditionally known for.
It is interesting because I think that the background piece for Bain has always been very diverse. When I joined, I had a master's in engineering. In my immediate bay, the other 6 people, one was undergraduate MMSS, I think, from Northwestern, so like statistical analysis and marketing, all that stuff. There was a government major in my bay, and I'm not even still sure exactly what that was. There were undergraduate business majors. We had liberal arts majors. So the background diversity, even decades ago, was quite similar. I think what's different now is the diversity of backgrounds is also leading to a diversity of roles, because you can have an MBA and want to be a consultant at Bain, which is great, but you might have an MBA and want to work on our M&A team. We've done almost 20 acquisitions in the last 3 years as a firm, bringing in different capabilities and different expertise into the firm, which means we have an M&A team, like a more traditional company would have an M&A team. You might have an MBA and decide you want to work in our finance department. You might have an engineering degree like me and want to be a consultant, but you might want to be an engineer on our app development team in our innovation and design groups. And so the diversity of destinations is probably the thing that's most different, but also creates a lot of really neat opportunities for people, because they sort of think of Bain as just a consulting firm, just hiring consultants. But the truth is, we're a multi-billion-dollar multinational company with offices in 65 different markets, and we're hiring a lot of people just like a lot of companies are. They're all in support of our mission to drive impact at our clients, but at the end of the day, we're still a company, and we have all of the functions that any company would have.
That M&A piece is interesting to me, Keith. I was just reading up a little bit before our conversation today, and I know that Bain's recently acquired, I think it's Proxima procurement consultancy based in the UK and also active in the US. You've acquired, I think it's Arc Blue in Australia, also procurement focused. And so outside of procurement, what are some other sectors that you feel like Bain's going to see outsized growth in here in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, there's the businesses we've looked over the last couple of cycles, and I'll say cycles because we could say monthly, quarterly, annually. The business is actually growing in all dimensions, which I think most people hear that and they go, no, seriously, which one do I want to put on my resume? Because that's where you're hiring. And the truth is that in every geography, in every one of our practice areas, so industry areas and capability areas. So you have one way to divide up the world on the consulting side is to say, well, what industry are you affiliated with? But there's also capability. And that might be performance improvement, that might be strategy, that might be customer experience, right? There's a lot of capabilities. At every cell of that matrix, we've seen robust growth in the business in every geography. When you think about M&A, we are adding scale and some of our areas, like you mentioned, the 2 procurement-focused acquisitions that we've made, but we've also made investments in acquisition in other areas that extend the scope, like thinking about tech economy, which brings tech due diligence to our private equity consulting business, which is far and away the leader in the space, consulting to private equity firms. We now have the capability, even stronger capability, to look at the tech infrastructure at the assets that are in play. Is there cybersecurity up to speed? Is there a business continuity plan where it needs to be? Is the underlying infrastructure there to support the growth that's part of the deal thesis? We acquired OpEx Engine, which brings benchmarks that nobody else has in-house. We acquired Spike down in South America, which brings deep analytics capability in specific areas into house as well. So we're seeing a lot of really exciting growth. But what that means is for Bain, you're not just looking at the traditional core consulting skill set, pure strategy. that might be your focus as a consultant, but you're getting a lot of exposure to best-in-class capabilities in all of these other areas when you work at Bain, which is also really neat. They're not like way over there and you hear about them. They're actually a lot of times integrated onto our case teams, which is really neat.
That's really exciting. It
Yeah.
seems like the pandemic's been a catalyst for this M&A activity. What else has changed over the last 3-ish years, just as far as how Bain operates and what's new at the firm that folks may not really know about?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. I'm taking this call from my old stomping grounds in Boston at a hotel that I used to be at monthly, and this is my first time here in 2.5 years. So what's changed is I'm back on a plane a little bit, just for first trip internally. But over the last 3 years, I would say that we were already on a path to using technology to enable, and I'll talk about it from a recruiting perspective. But we were already on a path to using technology to drive some of the knowledge sharing, connectivity, and information sharing, relationship building with the audience that's out there interested in working at Bain anywhere in the world. We were already on that path. Organizations like Management Consulted, but all of the online forums, make information available earlier as soon as people want it. In the past, you wouldn't know much about any company until they came to the career day on campus and gave you, a punishing PowerPoint presentation for an hour. And now we're finding, and we were finding before COVID, that people were getting admitted to business school in March and reaching out to us on LinkedIn in April to hear what we did and what we were about. And so right now we're actually in the middle of a program we call Experience Bain, which is for incoming MBA students to learn about what we do. And we do a lot more programming earlier. And I say that COVID has helped in a weird way, because it's given us more permission to do things online, which allows the information sharing to just grow exponentially. And so that when we are in person and we do come to campus and we do coffee chats or other events that we're doing, we can focus on sort of the second and third order questions. We don't have to get into what is consulting and what practice areas do you have and where are your offices. And COVID has really accelerated that. It's also given us permission to do a lot more, like I said, online. I don't think students at the end of the pandemics are still saying, well, if you didn't come to campus and sit there in front of on the stage with a projector and share slides, you don't care about my school. That's not really a thing anymore.
So you're running Experience Bain right now for pre-MBAs, I'll call them.
Yes.
So who else are you recruiting, right? Like part-time MBAs, PhDs, and other advanced degree candidates. Who's eligible for a consulting role at Bain?
Yes, and yes, and yes. The Experience Bain is something specific for MBA students because we do know that they're interested and often eager. And honestly, we want to make it as easy as possible for them when they get to campus to use their time wisely, right? And if they can sort of sort through and rule things out or rule things in before they even get to campus, they can be much more focused when they are going through the process on campus, which should give them more time to experience what it's like to be in business school, and to spend time with a club and to spend time with friends and travel and do all the things that people do in business school, because they're not sort of trying to recruit for the entire universe of options that are out there. So that's Experience Bain. Part-time MBAs is an interesting one. We've had an effort in place. I have a part of my team right now that has been in place for at least 5 years, if not longer, focused on recruiting from part-time MBA programs. We know there's a lot of really great talent in those programs. They've historically had a difficult time plugging into the full-time programs recruiting process. And so what a lot of students do, which they don't need to for us, is try and sync up their end date with the full-time programs. So a disproportionate number of the part-time students graduate in June, miraculously, right? But the truth is we're hiring year-round. And so we want to talk to those students wherever they are in their process. If they graduate in December, great. We have start dates in the first quarter. If you graduate at the end of the summer, great. We can bring you on in the fall. So we know there's a lot of part-time MBA students that are interested, and we'd be happy to talk with them and continue growing that pipeline. Advanced degrees is something that Bain does hire a lot of. A lot of them come through campus, but the majority of them come through a program we call Advantage. And we've been running Advantage for several years now. It went virtual for a few, but we're back. But it gives them a unique window and opportunity to learn about Bain. They apply for the program. It's grown every year that we've had it, and we're really thrilled with the outcomes. But they basically I'm going to play a little loose. My team will probably send me an email after this, but they basically go through 2 days of training, and then 2 days on a mini case assignment, and then a day of sort of debriefing, presenting what they worked on, and a lot of them have the opportunity to interview at the end of that week and get the full-time offer coming out of that. That's a really neat way for advanced degrees to experience what it is like to work at Bain. So they're getting to know us, we're getting to know them in a way that's different than just coming to a presentation, looking at some PowerPoint, and then doing a case interview. You know, we both get to sort of get some live action in.
Experiential wins the day every time, I think. So,
absolutely, absolutely. And Experience Bain Advantage is an excellent opportunity for advanced degree candidates to do that. You know, the other pool that I don't remember now if it was in your question or not, is just industry hiring or lateral hiring experienced professionals. We are hiring them. We've always been hiring them at scale, you know, in Europe and in APAC. I think in North America, we've seen a strong demand from the business to find even more people that are working professionals that want to. What's been interesting for me and the team, you know, some of these people we met on campus, maybe they didn't get through our process, maybe they opted out of the process because, you know, depending on where you were coming out of school, you thought you were going to be a .com millionaire. But we're also finding people that are new to Bain, and a lot of them went to MBA schools and wanted to do something different, which was great. But not everybody that's coming in laterally even has an MBA. They just have great work experience. There's a lot of really talented people out there, and we're really excited when they you know, choose to come here and learn more about us and engage in our process.
Keith, you're busting a lot of myths right now, which I love.
I know.
You get hundreds of emails a week asking us that same question, but now it's not me telling you; it's the head of global consultant recruiting who's telling you the same thing. So.
They debate this with me on the Reddit forums, and I'm like, no, seriously, I would know.
If anyone would, right?
Right, you would think.
So I don't want to get you in trouble with your team, Keith, but I do have to ask you,
okay.
Right? So you said the state of the industry is strong. It seems like Bain is growing right up and to the right. Does that mean that we're going to see more robust hiring this year than we've ever seen before? Can you talk to us a little bit about your hiring targets and just what those look like?
Yeah, so it is interesting because I think people, you know, there are several industries where depending on the economy, things tighten up really quick, right? And so they're sort of, you know, I don't think everybody realizes, you know, Dow Jones is 30 stocks, but the Dow Jones plummets and everybody thinks, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose the offer that I have. That's not how it works. So I think for people that are new to the industry, we're a strategy firm. We're thinking about things on a multi-year basis, right? And I've now been here, depending on where we go this year, you know, it'll be my third or fourth, you know, major economic downturn. I was here for the .com bust, the housing bust, the last financial crisis, COVID. And every time we've had a downturn that was sort of catastrophic, our business has come back stronger on the back end of that than it was heading into it. And our business has been strong the entire time I've been here, right? What that means, though, is that when you come out of those downturns, you actually need capacity to do that. And, you know, with all due respect to other industries, these aren't the types of roles where I can just say, we need people tomorrow, get them in here because we have a team for them next week, right? They actually have to be experienced. They have to know what they're doing. So, you know, and a little bit, I like to sort of joke around a little bit and use like a high school metaphor, you know, like I have first year consultants, but I need second year consultants on the team. And I need third year consultants or managers on that team. And so just because 1 year might be down a little bit, you know, I can't have a high school with no second year students in it. So when you think about things more strategically, let's say we're a strategy firm, right? We tend to hire through the downturn because we're thinking about what it'll look like in the longer term and what we'll need in the future when the immediate crisis ends. So to answer your question directly, yes, we will see more hiring this year than we've ever seen. In fact, it will probably accelerate even over what it's been during my tenure and 9 years into this role. Our hiring needs are stronger than I've ever seen them. And that includes beyond just the associate consultant and consultant roles. If you have a background in any of those areas, whether it's data science, innovation, if you have an interest in some of our business function roles, there's an awesome team here that wants to talk to you about that as well. But we will go to campus. Once again, I say it every year. It's funny you said people don't believe. We have our largest intern class that we've had at Bain ever, again this year. And our full-time class this year will be Bain's largest full-time class. And that's what we're planning for next year as well.
I love it. You're just busting myths all over the place, Keith.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. But there's a lot of really great people out there, and I hope that is encouraging, because I do think that some people opt out. It is a competitive process, and you do have to prepare, and you do have to invest in the process, but we're only limited by the number of great people we can find.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my spin on what Keith just said is, it seems like consultant hiring, at least at Bain, is somewhat recession proof. So
it is, during recessions, and I'll speak for us, I won't speak for other consulting firms and other businesses, but the nature of the work might change a little bit. And I also don't know that everybody who's relatively new to the industry thinks about it that way. But when the business is booming, then you have to be smart about where you invest your capital and where you grow and whether or not it's a good time to launch a new product. But when times get tough and you need to pull back, you need to think about what are the acceptable sacrifices to make without mortgaging the long-term future of the business. Both of those are very strategic questions that you can use outside help on. One is because things are so great, you don't know where to go. And other things are, things are so tough, but you're not sure what to slow down on. And so in some ways it is recession proof, but the nature of the work changes, but the demand for Bain doesn't.
Absolutely. Bear market or bull, there's a use case for consulting.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. So you mentioned in your previous answer, Keith, right? Hey, even if you're not interested in client-facing or consulting roles, our team would love to talk to you. So can you talk to us a little bit about the non-consulting roles that are available at Bain and what those look like and who's eligible?
Yeah, so there is the full range. So we are finding, so we have, if you think about we call them business functions, but if you think about, we have a marketing team, we have a talent acquisition team, we have an HR team, a legal team, but we also have, a lot of expert professionals. We have data scientists, we have people in our advanced analytics group, we have an innovation and design team at Bain. We have sort of all of these sort of deep expertise. We have app developers and engineers, not just doing client-facing work, but we also have them in our own technology services group inside Bain, right? Because we have obviously huge data security, cybersecurity needs as well, and privacy concerns. We're running a lot of large systems. But you might say, well, I want to be more client-facing. I don't want to be an in-house marketing person, right? Well, we have a digital marketing group that came over when we acquired Forward. And there are people that are building entire careers and deep expertise in the Amazon ecosystem, or looking at Google's AdWords systems and bringing that expertise to clients when they're launching new businesses or launching new products. And so there's a full range of roles, and you can find those roles on our website. But for people who say, I don't know that I want to be a consultant, I want something a little more predictable or a little more stable, or for whatever reason, I was a consultant before I went to school and now I'm looking for a change of pace. We have those roles at Bain, and I encourage them to just take a look on the site and see what's out there.
And are you hiring for those roles year round, or there recruiting cycles for those roles?
No, those roles are just like what you would expect to see at any company. As the roles come up, they get posted to the website. There's a job spec, and we go from there. So those are year round, and they're global. I think a lot of times people tend to think of, I'm here in Boston where our headquarters is. They tend to think of us as a US firm hiring in the US, but the truth is we are in every major market around the world. And these roles actually, in some ways, are geographic independent, because you're supporting the case teams and you're part of the case teams, but that doesn't mean you're sort of on the team from that office. So a lot of those sort of non-traditional consulting roles are sort of more geographically dispersed than people would expect.
So speaking of recruiting cycles, there are cycles for the client-facing traditional consulting roles.
Sure.
And like we mentioned at the top of the call today, for some roles, it seems like there are multiple application deadlines. So one of the things that I've heard is that, hey, right, if you want to maximize your chances of getting an interview, you apply with the first wave of candidates, right? Is that true? Is that another myth you're going to bust for us? How does Bain think about that? Like, are you filling spots as you go?
So yes, for the most part, right? So let's take apart, when you think about the recruiting cycles, let's take the non-consulting roles out for a second, because those literally are like every other job. There's a spec, you apply to the spec, they get posted as we need them, and we fill them as soon as we can. That's a different thing, but there's a lot of them. Okay. For the campus roles, you can think about it as associate consultant, which is typically the role we hire out of undergrad. And again, I'll play a little loose with the facts, but you can think about it as consultant, which are the roles we hire from sort of PhD programs or MBA programs. Again, speaking a little general. There's sort of two main on-ramps for those campus populations. One is the internship program, where before your last year of college or your bachelor's degree, you can be an associate consultant intern, and you would intern for 10 weeks and then hopefully get the full-time offer. And for the last couple of years, they've come together. Or, in between years of business school, you would interview, be a summer associate, get the full-time offer, and decide what you want to do. Those cycles, I will say it like this. The deadlines are very clear on the website. You can think of that as round zero of the interview process. Can you find the deadline and apply on time? Generally speaking, for MBAs, the internship deadline is somewhere in December, usually early December, and we interview in January. And then again, generally speaking, for full-time MBAs, it's actually like really early, like late September, early October deadline. And we even interview people for full-time earlier than that. Maybe they decided they wanted to do a startup, or they were otherwise committed for their summer, so they didn't come through the internship process, but they know they'd like to talk with us full-time. A lot of times we will just talk with them before the second year, so they'll just interview earlier. At the undergraduate level, that varies a little bit more depending on the market that your audience is in, but it starts actually quite early. So there are actually interviews happening during the summer before their final year of college, as well as the campus process. Specific to your question, if we can bust myths a little bit, again, we're only limited by the number of great people we can find. I think people sort of say, well, I'll apply. It's depending on the news cycle and the rumor mill online on the online forums. If you apply earlier, there's more spots, so you're more likely, but you're also less prepared because we might be your first case interview. But if you apply later, you're going to be a case pro, and it doesn't matter. I think people should give the interviewers a little bit more credit for understanding where you are in the cycle and being able to calibrate how you do in the interviews and the process. When we talk with people early on in the MBA programs for some reason or another, we know they've only had one semester of class. Like, come on. Nobody expects somebody who's been working and never went to business school, but has been working for 5 years and has awesome experience in corporate to case the same way as somebody who's on a campus with 50 people that worked in consulting last year in a management consulting club that meets weekly. We know that.
Wait, you guys are robots? What?
Right, exactly. Like, we know that. We're a strategy firm. We think about this stuff. But I want people to apply when they feel like they're ready. That's the important part. And that's not something that I can say, but it's not something that they should feel like they need to game the system on. We do, I think, a reasonable job of calibrating, and it's more important that they feel confident and prepared for the interview than they say, well, if I don't apply now, I'm going to miss it, and this is going to be harder. People do the same thing with business school applications, and I don't think they need to. The truth is you should worry about the stuff you control and do it when you're ready.
Folks, I'll just repeat it for the people in the back. Apply when you're ready.
Apply when you're ready. You can only apply once every 12 months, though. There are people who come back like 2 weeks later and say, okay, so I think I took your feedback. I'm ready again. And I'm like, I'm going to need you to wait for a minute. So there are a few people who don't interview on campus in the fall. We do see a handful of them come back in the spring and say, hey, situations change. And depending on the rationale, we'll talk with them as well.
We'll be right back after this quick message from our sponsor. LEK Consulting, a strategy consulting firm with global reach, is hiring now for several roles across functions and geographies. At LEK, you'll find an environment that supercharges professional development and on-the-job learning. You'll gain unparalleled experience due to the rigor and diversity of the work, as well as the support and mentorship you receive along the way. At LEK, you'll work in small project teams on a range of critical problems for your clients, from growth strategy to market entry to post-merger support and more. You'll also develop a comprehensive set of critical business skills, including leadership, analytics, communication, people management, and more. If you're ready to broaden your skill set and deepen your business acumen, consider a career with LEK. Learn about open roles and submit your application now at lek.com or via the link in this episode's show notes.
So, okay, Keith, let's say I'm going to transition a little bit from application to interview.
Sure.
So let's say I make it through the rigorous screening and application process, right? I'm like, hey, I've got a first round interview at Bain. This year, what can I expect, right? Virtual interviews, on-site interviews, right? What's coming down the pike at me?
So it's a great question. Well, one of the things that we're really proud of that we announced a couple of months ago, I think, that we were the first consulting firm to be carbon negative. And so we are also thinking of last year. So we are thinking about our carbon footprint. And it turns out flying hundreds of people, thousands of people around the world to talk with us for 40 minutes at a time is not necessarily environmentally responsible.
You don't say.
Right. It's almost like we have, greater goals than just what's immediately in front of us. But kidding aside, this year, definitely in North America, we're still working it out on some of the other markets globally, North and South America. We're going to be flight free in the first round interviews. So I wouldn't say virtual, because of course, I live in Chicago. I live a mile from Booth. It's 4 miles from the office. We can do it on Zoom, but it's not a big deal for you to come downtown. However, we probably wouldn't fly somebody from the East Coast to the West Coast for 90 minutes of interviews. So we're going to try and be flight free this year, but that might mean in person for some and virtual for others. But again, after 2 years, I think we know how to do virtual interviews, and I think people know how to engage virtually in a way that's fine. So typically you would expect, depending on whether or not it's first and final round or it's 2 rounds of interviews, for first and final, it's going to be 3 interviews. 2 of them will probably be cases. 1 of them will be an experience interview. And we're really just talking about your resume and your background. We want to hear sort of what makes you tick, what things you're proud of, what accomplishments you had, what particular challenges you had that you had to overcome, so we can get a sense of how you operate. In the 2-round format, it's usually 2 first-round cases and then 3 interviews in the second round. Again, 1 of them is an experience interview and 2 of them are cases. The first round isn't harder than the second, or the second round's not harder than the first round. The interviewers tend to be more experienced, so people might feel like it's harder, but it's not. The cases are the cases. That's typically what you'd expect for consulting jobs at Bain.
Pretty straightforward.
Very straightforward.
So you're flight free for recruiting, but obviously you're in Boston right now.
Yes.
And so what is Bain doing with this, hybrid work model that we've been reading and hearing so much about, right?
Yeah.
Is that just par for the course now at Bain, right? Is travel a requirement for client-facing roles? What's expected once I join the firm?
So one thing that I think is important for people to understand is we've always had a home office model at Bain that we're really proud of. I didn't say local office model. I said home office model, right? I am a 2 million miler tag on my luggage. I have been on the plane plenty. But what it means is that at Bain, you join an office. I'm speaking for consulting staff, but when you join Bain, you join an office. Whenever possible, and I was a staffing manager in our office, whenever possible, we will staff the team out of the office, right? So you're a Chicago consultant. You're going to work with a senior manager and associate consultants and other consultants that are from Chicago. Now, that might mean that you're getting on a plane with your Chicago team and flying all over the place like consultants can do sometimes. But what that means, and has always meant for us, is that we travel when we need to be at the client. Because if there's no meetings on Thursday, we can fly back Wednesday night because we can have the case team meeting in the Chicago office because we're all from the same office. And that's like one of those things with our home office model I don't think people realize, but when you sort of pick and choose people from different offices like some other firms do, the only common place that they have is the client. So meetings or no meetings, the only way we're going to be in person is if we're away from home. And again, that doesn't mean we travel less or we travel more. It means we've always traveled when necessary. I've had the 4-day-a-week travel case, and I've had a case where I never really had to go to the client. COVID hasn't changed that. What it has done is gotten our clients more comfortable engaging over Zoom. Right. And what that means is the bar is even higher for when we need to hop on a plane and go to the client. But there's a lot of work, just like there was pre-COVID, where you just got to be there in person. Like Miro is great, but you need to be at the whiteboard, right? You need to go to the factory floor and see what's happening. There's no substitute for that in some cases, but it's not a default. But I think clients have gotten more comfortable using technology. And one of the benefits of the last couple of years, there are few, but one of them is that I think people have gotten more comfortable operating in a virtual environment, have gotten more comfortable using Zoom and some of the other tools that are out there to engage. And there's now sort of a generation of people coming off campus that can frankly navigate that hybrid world better than a lot of us that have been working for a long time. Because I watched my sons do it in college with, checking every Sunday night, are we in person tomorrow or are we online tomorrow? Right? Do I need to be there live or is it going to be recorded? And that wasn't a thing a couple of years ago. And so there's now this like huge energy of people coming in that can navigate that world, and they're actually teaching some of us about how to do it effectively, which is really awesome. So I wouldn't overlook the skill set that people have, even though they were in kind of a weird 2-year experiment when they were in school. Some of that stuff is going to stay, and they're going to be better at it and more comfortable with it than a lot of us. It's really neat.
Absolutely. So how does that play into Bain's broader employee wellness initiatives? Right, that's been top of mind for many companies, and I'm sure Bain as well. How are you leading the way in the industry in this particular area?
Yeah. So look, one of our operating principles, literally says a Bainey never lets another Bainey fail. Said another way, we actually care about each other. Beyond just what you can bring to my team, I actually care about you as a person and as a human being first. And that's always been first and foremost in Bain, and it's part of who we are as a firm. I'm going to make a shameless plug for another podcast, Beyond the Bio, which is where I spend my time when I'm also on my own podcast. In a recent episode, we're doing a series right now on employee wellness. It's a four-part series. Part 2 was with Mackenzie Morrison, who's one of the leaders in an initiative that we call BEST, and it's Balance, Energize, Successful Teams. That is sort of the umbrella brand that we use for all of our employee wellness efforts. And it includes inspirational leadership. It includes personal capacity. It includes a lot of the things that we're doing both on soft skills and thinking about, how can you just navigate life better, but also, like true employee wellness, using meditation, finding access to mental health professionals and things like that. I bring up that podcast episode because Mackenzie gets into detail in that in a way that she will be upset if I butcher all of what she said on there, because she is clearly an expert in it. And I would encourage people to go back, and maybe in the show notes, you could just include a link to it, because it really does explain it. 2020 accelerated, again, the path that we were already on as a firm because of who we are as a firm. I think the racial unrest that we experienced, the pandemic that we experienced, sort of the turmoil politically everywhere in the world, put a lot on people. And one of the things that we accelerated, I just referred to it a second ago, was our personal capacity training. We had been rolling out this program that we call Personal Capacity at Bain. And Mackenzie sort of took that and doubled down on it and sort of accelerated, what probably would have been a 2-year timeline, and said, let's hit go now, because people are really, really struggling. And one of the things that personally, like at the highest level, it focuses on 4 pillars: centeredness, physiological well-being, psychological well-being, and then practicality. I was one of the personal capacity trainers in Chicago, and one of the things that I thought was amazing was we were actually talking about, like, are you getting enough sleep and are you getting enough exercise? Are you eating well? At work. And I was like, wow, I can't remember, like, why are we talking about this at work? And it was because in order to be like your best self, you actually have to take care of your physical and psychological and emotional self, not just sit through another training on how to be a better analyst. And Bain has a lot of programs and support in place to do that. So I think during the pandemic, we really accelerated that. And we've continued that with, talks and webinars, and we have access to meditation apps that are part of our health benefits plan. There's a lot of things that we're doing to really support people as they navigate things that are really tricky, both with themselves and with their loved ones.
I love that. Keith, I've saved my hardest hitting question for you for last.
Okay,
lay it on. Do a couple of fun questions.
Let's have it.
Get ready here.
Okay.
So one of the biggest, stories in the news and what's been affecting everyone personally has just been inflation. And so, right, with this inflationary environment we find ourselves in, especially in the US, how is that going to impact, starting salaries at Bain for folks that are getting offers this year? Any tea you want to spill regarding salaries, and if there are, raises coming?
Yeah. So what I would say is consulting is a very lucrative field to be in. And working at Bain & Company is typically one of the more lucrative options that people can consider coming out of school. We deliver tremendous results to our clients because we bring great people and great teams to solve their toughest problems. Hiring great people means you need to pay like you're hiring the best people out there. And we try and do that across the company as best we can, but without foreshadowing and putting numbers on the table. Nice try. I will say that we will continue to be one of the leading compensation employers that people have when they're coming out of school looking to get into consulting. That's always been the case, and that's not going to be different next year.
Okay, Keith, you've got a future in politics if you want it.
At least I didn't go on a 20-minute rant that was totally off topic.
That's true. That's right. I do have to give you credit there. But, to be fair to you, Bain does pay incredibly competitive salaries, fantastic benefits package. And, we don't expect that to change anytime.
Yeah, actually, if you want to tie the two together, one of the things that we doubled down on and expanded during COVID was actually the ergonomic benefit that we provide people. So, people that join Bain, in I think just about every role, get a home tech package so that they can set up their home space with, a proper monitor, proper keyboard, so that they can work from home. But it extended during COVID to, actually we call it like an erg package, an ergonomics package. But, we have relations with a couple of vendors so they can get a proper chair or proper lighting and things like that. Like we're actually thinking about like, how are people getting their work done? And it's beyond supporting them. Like, I get it, you're sick, you need some time off, but like really supporting them. Like, are you thriving? Right? I don't need you to keep you like just operating on the edge. I want you to thrive. And we realized, especially when we went completely remote in 2020, that not everybody's situation was set up for that. Yes, they had high speed at home, but not for 5 days a week working at home. They had it for like log in the evening and do a few things from home. And so, that's where the benefits and the compensation that we're thinking about fits with, what's changed during the pandemic under the umbrella of, are we doing right by our people? That's why we're the best place to work, because it's something that's very important to us.
Amazing. Well, Keith, I want to ask you a couple personal questions just to get to know you a little bit better. And so our community can get to know you a little bit better. So, what's the favorite book you're reading right now, or a show you're streaming, right? You were just on a plane to Boston. You had to have been watching something, anything that's been capturing your attention.
So I'm a little bit of so I can only read one book at a time. So aside from my sort of daily devotions, I'm not one of those people who can have like 6 books in progress. I don't work like that. And I have to have paper because I write people think I'm in school, but I have to write when I read. Right now I'm reading Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which is about I'll say the tragedy of the relationship the U.S. government had with Native Americans during the sort of revolutionary period and beyond. And it's just an area that was of interest to me. And I figured I don't need to speculate. I listened to the This Land podcast a couple months ago, which was awesome. Probably get a new episode after the Supreme Court ruling, I think yesterday or last week on Oklahoma. And it just piqued an interest in learning a little bit more about it. And so rather than just rely on Twitter, I went and bought a book and actually am reading about it. Next up on my list is a book on Paul Laurence Dunbar, written by a good friend of mine, Gene Jarrett. Shout out to Gene. But he wrote a book on Paul Laurence Dunbar. It's the definitive biography on Paul Laurence Dunbar. It's really long, and I gave him a hard time because it has no pictures in it. But I think I will probably go there next. We'll see.
Okay, well, I've got a couple new books to add to my list now, and I think that's just a good rule for all of us to follow. Right, get your information from books before you go to Twitter. I like that.
Yeah, and then tweet about it.
Yeah, and then you can tweet in informed tweets. Yeah,
exactly.
Keith, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insight's been invaluable. I've really enjoyed our conversation and appreciate your time.
No, thank you for having me back. And it's always great to see you too. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Strategy Simplified. As always, if you like what you heard, leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you want help navigating consulting interviews, work with us through our Black Belt program. You can learn more through the link in the show notes. We'll see you next time.